Welcome everyone to our next Ecocivilisation talk. Just before we start, let me just tell you some house rules. So this event is being recorded and we're also live streaming on Facebook. So the recording will be available on our Facebook page, Ecocivilisation, and also on our website. And you can rewatch it if you want. If you have any technical issues, please write to me in the chat and we can resolve them during the event. You are more than welcome to ask questions. You can write them in the comment box or in the Q&A section. And if the questions are meant for someone specifically, please write their name next to it so that we can address it to the right person. Or if you will want, you will also be given the opportunity to ask them yourselves. Just raise hand or write in the comment box that you would like to raise a question and we'll give you permission to speak. Yeah, I think that's it. If anything happens, just write to me and we'll try to resolve it. And you're also invited to write in the comment box where you're coming from, so we'll know from which countries are we gathered here today. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Pina Maya. A warm welcome from my side as well to everyone, especially to our young guests, and of course to all of you who are eager to hear what's their views and how they see the world of today and tomorrow. So before we dive deep into the discussion, I would like to share with you a few information and some wrap-up messages from the previous meetings and of course from the eco-civilization movement itself. First of all, this is the fourth gathering in 2021. Here are some key messages and some key topics that are evolving. We're not even a year-old movement. However, many very, very interesting things have emerged in this period. First of all, we dare to challenge everyone that we are at the point in the development of our civilization where we need to start thinking about the next paradigm. There are many elements that are prompting us into that. That's why one of the core messages of the eco-civilization movement is eco-civilization, our joint next destination. Of course, we're challenging this thought. It's not happening automatically. And gathering information from all over the world, from all different continents, claiming that eco-civilization might just be the ticket for our existence, emerging from a rising awareness and a higher density of global consciousness. We dare to think that this will be, for the first time in the history of humankind, that civilization will emerge from this global consciousness compared to all other civilizations that we are aware of today. Which were geographically located and they came from a specific geographical destination. I'm not going to go, of course, through all the discussions we've had so far in last year and this year, but I would like to just pass some key messages of 2021. And in the first two eco-civilization talks, where we really focused on the root of civilizations, we looked at the reasons for their rise and fall, discussed the weak signals and leverage points that could help us to sense when our civilization might be challenged to transform itself into something else. We have also concluded that one unique element of our civilization is the information in real time, which could probably help us to do a peaceful transformation without a complete destruction, as many times happened in the past to other civilizations. So there was also the conclusion that we need to join forces globally and develop models that can cope with the volatile, complex, and ambiguous conditions that we are all part of, and of course create fresh opportunities for ourselves on the top of these dynamic, many times almost chaotic systems. In the third Eco-Civilization talk, we look deep into the challenges of the high-level politics and acknowledge the need for its transformation. We looked at the grassroots movements, which are capitalizing the benefits of digital means and use them to better and better self-organize, reflecting more and more true needs of our citizens, societies on a local level as well. We also recognize the missing link between this top-level politics and grassroots movements, and sort of identified this missing middle link as a fresh new opportunity. We also highlighted the contribution of digital means to the development of all the movements that are happening around the world right now, and raised the strong points of younger generations who are entering the job market in this very complex and, as I said before, almost chaotic conditions. So with that in mind, I'd like to share with you just a bit more information about what's going on within the eco-civilization movement, and where can you join us next, or how can you maybe contribute something fresh and new from your side, because the movement is growing, as you can see, in many different directions, bringing people together from many different worlds and addressing the needs of different parts of the world, while asking and inviting people globally to look at them and join forces in order to find the solutions and in order to move forward together, smarter, stronger, wiser, and especially more equipped with the tools which give us confidence that, of course, when we think together, when we act together, we can address any challenge that is coming in our way. So besides eco-civilization talks, which are part of today's discussion, we also have eco-civilization in action, which looks closer into circular economy. You can see dates of the next events on your screen. We have a global open house where there is, no questions, pre-announced questions. People come, join the thoughts, and always something really beautiful emerges out of it. We have Year of Ubuntu, which will meet next time at the last Sunday in May, where we are starting to bring the old wisdoms forward and give them the fresh new meaning in the 21st century. And of course, we just started with, we're just getting ready to start a whole TV series on under the title Destination Eco-Civilization, which will start in Slovenian language, but hopefully somebody else will get inspired and can take it in other parts of the world as well. We also started with Eco-Civilization podcasts, which will start publishing them as well. And the latest is that the Global Women Economic Forum and Ladies League recognized Eco-Civilization of one of the top 100 global projects that will make a difference in the world in the future. So I can also announce that in the next 2 years, we plan to establish 100 eco-civilization nodes around the world and bring even stronger the global awareness, global thoughts, global initiatives together, and make them even stronger in a sort of global movement where we could all more confidently co-create the future we want to live in. So this was just a very brief introduction from my side, just to give you really a chance to see what's going on and to maybe provoke you that you would like to add your own little piece in this emerging network of possibilities. And of course, through that, give us all a chance that we grow together even stronger. But today, the focus is on the post-millennial generation and what are their thoughts, how they see their today and their future. And of course, what can we learn from them? Hopefully we'll know at the end of this session. With us are exciting young people who come from 4 different continents. 𝗫𝗫𝗁 is coming from India, and she is doing her master in gender studies, and she's an active advocate of the concepts of gender equality, patriarchy, feminism, human rights, nationalism, politics, peace, conflicts, and sexualities. 𝗫𝗫𝗁 is currently the national president of the Council of Ethics at the Indian World 𝗊𝗶𝗊𝗲𝐶𝐶I, and at the core of the 𝗵𝗲𝗿𝗁 Foundation, as well as an advocate of the Swedish Institute Leader Lab 2021. 𝗫𝗫𝗁 and her team also recently published an annual review on the state of sexual harassments in India. Then we have Jimena Zebalos. She is also a student. She's doing master program of social science. She is a curious and passionate young Bolivian-Argentinian who studied and worked as a Waldorf teacher for 7 years. She's very open-minded to understand different realities and cultures, currently also working and creating different global partnerships in her new job. 𝗘𝗰ησε, coming from Germany, student, environmental science, master studies. 𝗘𝗰 is part of a new political movement in Germany called 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗁, aiming to implement a grassroots democracy under the premises of 4 holistic pillars: mindfulness, freedom, power limitations, and collective intelligence. His personal goal is to effect positive change in the way we live together. 𝗵𝗲 Munyoma from Zimbabwe, student of Master Science in Entrepreneurship and Innovation. 𝗵𝗲 is an education entrepreneur who founded 𝗫𝗫𝗁 Network, a digital learning and consultancy startup that supports young people in Africa with early career development. He is on a mission to use digital technology to unlock human potential capacity across Africa. Pina Maya Bulls, student, master in marketing and sales, master science, marketing and sales, nature enthusiast, a scout, and animal lover. She is a marketing freelancer and believes in finding the balance in everything we do, and most of all, loving what we do. Through many years of experience in leadership, non-formal education, mentoring, and coaching, she learned that listening is not the same as hearing, and finding your own path is the hardest, yet the most beautiful thing one can do for themselves. So these are our young people we're going to be talking with today. So what is the challenge that we'd like to address with them? The challenges of today and tomorrow is that we'd like to bring their attention to are, of course, pandemic. We cannot avoid talking about that, climate change, and the quality of life. And all of that has touched every single one of us. So I'm very proud that we can discuss these issues with them. And let me just now ask, before we dive into the discussion with them, 2 of our dear colleagues, Alexander and Stefan, system science professionals, system science experts, and my dear colleagues for many years now, to just give yet another provocation and an opening to these young people before we let them speak. So, Alexander, please, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Violeta, and it's great to be here to explore these questions, which are really heartfelt. This is not academic. This is not like, well, let's think of something abstract. This gets to the heart of each and every one of us. And just a few clarifications, maybe to set the stage, because I want to talk about time. And a lot of what we're doing here, when we look at the questions of the post-millennial generations, and it's not just one generation, we already have several post-millennial generations who are being represented. And but to think about the youth, it bothers me because yes, it bothers me. Why? Because that makes me the old. Yeah, that's not good. No, you see. So I like to think of myself more as more chronologically sophisticated than you are. That empowers me with this. But in any event, I think this question of time is very important, because often we'll say, look, these people are our future. We have to talk to them, or something like that, as if there's some kind of other species existing not now. I would like to reframe that, because I don't think that the less chronologically sophisticated among us are the future. They are the present. They are now. And I think it's important that we relate in this way around the idea that we are all in community about the important issues of our time, and we face common futures, but it's not that anyone is not here now. And I think even subconsciously, when we think about, okay, well, these people are our future, we have to really start to talk to them or something, it's separating rather than joining. And I really want to think about this as, or invite everyone to think about this as engaging with people who are always our present, and we are all the future in that sense. Yes, certainly, there's a hope that there will be more unjaded and fresher perspectives, and because of the lack of chronological sophistication. And that's good. We want to get exactly fresh takes on things, because we happen to often have perspectives that have become habituated and used, and we don't see things as clearly or as freshly as maybe many of us used to. So one other thing I want to just connect here from slightly more systemic frame is, well, this was also generationally systemic. So seeing ourselves as coexisting now. Of course, we do that anyway, but the point is, even in our self-dialogue, when we say, okay, they are part of our conversations now, there's no they, frankly, we are all part of these conversations. And I think the idea of saying that we need to have somehow separate sessions to be able to have the old wise ones or the young wise ones participate. I think it's good to have sometimes focus on that, but in daily practice, this is part of the unity and diversity. And this is simply a different culture of time. So we're looking at different cultures, but temporal cultures. So that's a little bit of a provocation as well, thinking, can we maybe think about this in terms of the generations as being distinct cultures in temporal separation. The last thing I want to say here is about something that I think Kevin is working on, collective intelligence. And this idea that I think we must first begin to think in terms of connective intelligence. So with whom are we connected? And with what resources? And with what data information, something 𝗵𝗲 is working on as well. And how are we drawing on the different resources to make then the platforms for collective intelligence? So connective intelligence is a precursor for collective intelligence. And then there's collective intelligence, but that's not the objective. The objective is to reach perhaps stages of collective creativity and collective wisdom. So this is what we're looking for. So if we have but that requires this diversity, the full spectrum humaning, as sometimes we talk about, to create the rich dialogue, rich and respectful and engaged dialogue, what a friend of mine calls the 𝗵𝗲. So it's a way indeed of relating to all things with love. So with that, I will pass the talking stick back to Violeta so she can pass it on to Stefan.
Thank you, Alexander. I think this is a very strong thought about moving on from artificial intelligence to really collective creativity and collective wisdom. So thank you very much. And I think this will be our background vibe for today's discussion. Stefan, what else can you add to this?
Thank you very much for having me again. It is always a pleasure and also some pressure because I should provoke. As I'm not so provocative usually, this is quite a challenge. So chronologically sophisticated, as I am too. There is something that provokes me actually, as I am in many roles, a mentor and a super supportive system of my own, and then through what I've created for many people, especially young people. And I'm glad to see Jimena again, who once visited us in Vienna too, and I hope she enjoyed the time with us as well as we did with her. There is something I've experienced and which puzzles me, and that is that one is this temporal divide. Like, it is the first time in my life that I experience, especially from younger people, let's say also some questioning in a sense of, well, what do you know? I mean, like, you are of this old generation who actually made the whole mess here, right? and we know now how to get out of it. I like this stance. This is good. Although that what do you know puzzles me. Not that I know very much, but this, why is it that we need to divide temporarily or socially when it is the necessity to connect? And then I was wondering how, why, what is the system's logic behind that? And this is what I try to like pin it down just for the sake of the discussion here is I'm experiencing myself as well as an observation of people who I really want to support, that they have much more pressure than I had through my whole life with two things. One is called polarization of opinion, much stronger than I have experienced it ever. And unfortunately, through the means of technology being strengthened, which we all thought would actually make us connect better and, you know, get us more wise or at least more knowledgeable. But it seems to be that it is from a systems dynamics rather a tool for dividing us into polarized opinions, very strong opinions who are creating then divide rather than connection. And the other one is individualization. I'm talking here, of course, rather from the perspective of a Western culture, which I'm part of, but the individualization puts a lot of pressure on individuals. And then it becomes a really weird thing. Like, I have really this direct experience of people who really think that, like, I need to, you know, save, let's say, animals, humans, nature, the world. And they feel real physical, psychological pressure, of course, because then at some certain point you become in a state of, geez, can I? I mean, am I even able to do anything because I have this is my thing, I need to do this. Like, and here we're coming to this third word, which is identity, finding your own path. When is this ever stronger that at a certain point in your chronological sophistication, which is called the youth, right? And in this identity quest, there comes this pressure of polarization and individualization. Whereas, now comes the other thing, let's talk about collectivism. Let's talk about the pleasure of being in a group, and not only like-minded, but and not only like we all share the same value system, but we share the same space and we share the same time. And inclusion rather than polarization of opinion, of values, and of our wonderful humaning. And working and accepting that this world is a complete mess of contradictions, and working with these contradictions as not being opposed to my own path, but a garden full of energy for my own path first, and then also opportunities, and coming to a more connected. I like that very much. Also, I came to the same thing, like the connective intelligence, or the connections are so important. And thus, I'm super happy that I have another opportunity to connect with you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I'm so eager to listen to your achievements, because the other thing I told Violetta when she invited me again, I said, I can only do one thing: praise these wonderful speakers who are here today, because you have already achieved something that is called your own path. And I hope it is not your own path, it is our path as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Alexander and Stefan, for this opening sentences, thoughts, and of course, also the personal sort of energies that connects you with the young generations. So here we go. I'd like you to reflect on what you've heard, and which is directly connected to something that I wanted to ask you anyway, is, so what do you see in your personal world as the key challenge for today and the future? And can you relate to what Alexander and Stefan described as their point of view? And Hrishika, go ahead. I mean, this is something that I'm sure you are comfortable with, and maybe you can have the opening word, please.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very, very excited to hear what everyone else has to have to say as well. So I think to start with, what I think a challenge in my personal life is, I have been thinking about this for a while, right? And every time I try to go back to my personal life, I end up connecting it to my external life, right? So that's something that keeps happening with me at all times. So for me, I think personal and external are extremely interlinked. And what I do in my personal life invariably has an impact on what I do in my external life. So just to give you an example, right? If I use a plastic straw to have my morning milkshake, that will invariably have an impact on the larger threat that we are facing of climate change, right? So just to take on from what Stefan was also saying just now, right? So there is so much pressure on individuals that we forget about the importance of collectives. And I think what I think personally is that both of them are extremely important. So we need to take responsibility as individuals, but at the same time also, walk towards collective efforts and trying to find more collaborations. So in terms of the challenges, there are so many challenges that our civilization, our world is facing today. It's extremely difficult to pinpoint one challenge and, start talking about that. But, and I also feel that it's not right to hierarchize one problem over another. But what I do feel, and this is something Violetta and Alexander, both of you spoke about, right? Understanding the new kind of tools that we can create together, understanding fresher perspectives, taking different approaches to things that we see in our world. So I think what I really, really believe in is the fact that every time we face an issue, what we can end up doing is try to take an intersectional approach. Right now, every time I speak with people around me, what I do notice is that there is a lack of this intersectional approach. And what an intersectional approach essentially helps us do is that it helps us recognize the overlapping inequalities that an individual has to face, and at the same time helps us understand the multiple inequalities and multiple issues that exist. So
Hrishika,
I think
Hrishika, may I interrupt you here, because this is really, really important what you're just saying. So can you share with us, for example, how you deal with this interconnection between your personal challenges or opportunities and the external challenges, opportunities? I mean, how do you help yourself? I mean, you as a young woman, you've done enormous things already. So what's the secret?
So there isn't any secret as such. I think the only thing that I do is that I try to break away from the dichotomy between personal and external, which eventually helps me, interact with everyone who is a part of my external in that sense, just like the way I interact with people in my personal sphere. So that's the kind of approach that I'm trying to take, and that's what an intersectional approach is also helping me do. It's helping me understand other people's perspectives better. It's helping me understand my own privilege. It's helping me understand where other people stand within the society. So I think that's how I am trying to balance between my external life and my personal life, and trying to use my personal learnings into my external life in that sense.
Great, thank you for sharing that. It feels like you are who you are, no matter where you are.
I would like to believe so. That actually makes me happy. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So Jimena, I know, let's move to Bolivia now and to another part of the world. Do you feel similarly? How do you deal with this internal, external challenges, priorities, and of course, also some dreams, if I may call them that, please.
Yes, thank you, Violeta. So interesting. I would like to connect it a lot with what Alexander brought at the beginning with timing. And at least in these times, what has shaken me a lot is the acceleration that we have constantly into projecting and planning our future, not only as an individual, as an organizations, institution, like nationally, we can think of, we are constantly planning, thinking what should happen in the near future, in the long term, in the medium term, but we actually know nothing what's going to happen in the future. And now pandemic hit us very hard in our faces and everywhere. And it's like, okay, you thought you had under control all of these things, that you could plan what you wanted to do and where you were going to be and like everything, but no, you can't. And it's a feeling of losing control, but it's also good. It's bad and it's good because we feel lost, but lost in every sense. And this acceleration of time is, I cannot plan what I have to do, what I want to do, where I want to get, but instead of actually sensing and feeling what we must be doing. So what about moving from outside of our heads and going back to our body, into our hands, into a collective acting? I would like to add this category into all this collectivity, because I believe we are interconnecting in so many ways with this digital era that allows us to, manage a caudal of massive information, but are we really able to bring this down to reality, into let's calm down a little bit, connect? I would love to say, let's meet at a park, have some tea or juice, and let's talk there and start creating with our hands and do something. But because I believe change or something very deep transformational goes in that level. Of course, nowadays we have this challenge of how can we get to that in this digital, that it also enables us to be globally interconnected. I mean, right now, we're from all around the world connected in a very synchronicity way of what we think our values. And yes, I would love to see a next stage of how could we not even materialize, because that's also tricky. But yes, how can we come to create something, not only from our thinking and our feeling, but into a concrete thing, you know? So that's kind of.
May I ask you something at this point, because this is a very strong message, and it's probably one of the foundation of transformation, what you just mentioned. So do you think the time has anything to do with it, or is more some sort of density of our engagements, density of our thoughts, density of our interactions, and time is just, something that follows, but it doesn't really impact the results? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, time, I believe, is something abstract, and it's the perception that we have towards it, and it's also the commitment that we have or we do not have towards one or many things. So in the times where we are multitasking, we want to do 100 things, we're unable to go really deep in some sort of things. So I feel we have this pressure over ourselves, as Stefan was saying, I have to do this, I have to solve this, I have to, and then this pressure of what you have to do in your time, and our time in this planet is so short and just passes by. I mean, right now we're almost at the half of the year. Yeah, 2 months more, but you know, you know the feeling. So yes, again, I think it's time. It's a conception that we try to manipulate and control, but it's not something that we can actually do. Kind of feels it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jimena. And this is a good introduction to Kevin. Kevin, you are, as you're at your young age, really already involved in politics. So what can you do with these messages? You know, this is like a very provocative for today's perception of politics. So how do you relate to what your colleagues already commented, and where do you see yourself? How do you manage this internal external space? Please, Kevin.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here. Very interesting what I've just heard. And first of all, I'd like to go into that what Alexander just said, that connected intelligence comes first, or is a step before the collective intelligence. It is so true, and we experience it day by day here in our political movement in Germany, where we try to achieve this collective intelligence, but this is so hard due to the pandemic. That we first need to take a step backwards and look at how do we get connected as a entire system, as a whole, throughout Germany, so we can achieve this collective intelligence. It's very important. It's so important to involve digitalization and this responsibility everybody has with digitalization, and it's so difficult to achieve that. And coming to the point Rishika just mentioned, I can only agree with it, that for me it's the same. My internal and my external world are basically, or the challenges or opportunities I face are also very lenient. And especially in politics, I want to believe that we can achieve the collective wisdom due to the individual responsibility everybody has, and should try to focus and build upon this individual responsibility every citizen has. If it's in Germany, in a small town, if it's Germany as a whole or globally. So individual responsibility is a very, very important step, I believe, is necessary to achieve this collective wisdom, intelligence.
Kevin, may I ask you at this point something? Because Stefan before mentioned this pressure that it's now on every one of us, but especially on young people, to be responsible for the global issues. How do you relate with to that? Because you are advocating personal responsibility, which yes, we can be with you on that thought, but how do you relate with this pressure? Can individual responsibility really solve the global challenges?
It's a very good question, a very difficult question. Yeah, probably.
What would you need? What would you need as a young person to be confident and not afraid of this big challenge? What would you need to be able to act confidently?
Confidently, I believe one of the things we would need as a society is overcoming the obstacles of prejudice and stigmatizing in our society, because I think especially today it's very easy to put people in boxes and divide them, and I think also that's something Stefan said or Alexander said in the beginning. So basically the society we live in is just a contradiction of itself, and we're just separating people, we're dividing them, and then taking individual responsibility. And I think also that's something 𝗵𝗫 said, staying true to the path and finding your own path is then very difficult.
Okay, can I jump from this specific sentence now to Pinamaya? Because in her description that she put forward about herself, it says that this is really the hardest but the most beautiful thing that one can do for themselves, is to find your own path. Pinamaya, what would you add to this conversation?
Well, I think that many very interesting thoughts are raised today. I really like the thought about time. and maybe develop it a bit further that, well, we have as much time as we have. And there is always enough time for everything, but it depends on what our priorities are. What do we want to spend the time on? And I think that connects as well nicely with finding your, your own path. Kind of for me, it's finding the balance between everything I do, and yet find time for myself, and just discovering what is it that I want to do, what do I think that needs to be changed in my community or in the world, and just working from your inner truth. Because I do believe that if you are passionate about something, you'll find a way how to achieve it. And if that passion is not there, there will never be enough time for it, or there will always be too many obstacles that come into your way. But if you really are passionate about something, you won't see those obstacles as big walls, but just as some, branches that you can walk over.
Maya, you mentioned priorities. For a young person to already have the priorities figured out is quite a big challenge. So how do you get clarity for your own priorities? How do you shape them up that you can then follow them and align them with this inner call and the path itself?
Well, I think that's a never-ending story, actually, because we are evolving and changing day by day. And I think it's important that we don't forget that. So it's normal for our wishes or for our priorities to change. But I would say that the most important thing that you can and should ask yourself is, why are you doing certain things, and what is it that you want to do? Who are you? Because I do think that in the world where everyone keeps saying that you can be whoever you want to be, the hardest thing is to be yourself. And I think that if you are true to yourself and know how to listen to yourself, you can find your priorities, because you can feel inside of you what matters to you, what simply have to be there in your life, and what things you do just to do them, or because someone else told you to do them. But yeah, it's a never-ending story, and it's not an easy thing, and yet I think a very important thing, because your priorities determine what you will be spending your time on. And
Super. This is a really good starting point, or actually your ending point as a starting point to 𝗵𝗲𝗏. We're going now from Slovenia to Scotland, even though the 𝗵𝗲𝗏 originally is from Zimbabwe. So 𝗵𝗲𝗏, you are this young entrepreneur helping people to find their ways. I mean, you've heard so many interesting points now. So what do you make out of it? Can entrepreneurship be so undeterministic, dealing with such a dynamic systems as we've heard the previous speakers talking about? Please go ahead, 𝗵𝗲𝗏.
Thank you so much, and it's been interesting getting to hear where everyone's mind is with regards to this particular question. I think I'm going to go back to the first question, which is, what are the problems that I face as a young person, as a young entrepreneur? I think the problem is being young and old at the same time. And what I mean by that is, coming from a context like Africa, just to give an example, what do you think is the average age of a Ugandan? It's open to everyone. Type in the chat group, what do you think is the average age of a Ugandan? A young person in Uganda or an old person in Uganda, what do you think is the average age of a Ugandan? Let me see some numbers on the chat box. Wild guess is 25, 20, 25, 37, 22. So actually, the average age of a Ugandan is 16 years.
Oh.
So that's a very young population. So in Africa, we are led by young people. And what that means is, when we look at the history of the continent, with the youngest country, South Africa, having gained independence in 1994, with the first batch of young people that have been educated, that have access to technology, which their parents did not have access to. So as you are born into this world and as you are introduced to the reality of being young, you're also invited to the realities of being old, because now you have to pave way for those behind you, which are 0 to 1 years old. So in my line of work, where I work with young people through what we call an early career accelerator, I get 16-year-olds coming to me and saying, I don't know what to do, my life is over. And I'm like, I understand where they are, because for the first time in their lives, they've been educated, or the first person from their village that has gotten access to education. So you have more information on the problems that will befall you if you don't take particular action. Now, there's no time to soul search, because your community is on the lower hierarchy in the Maslow's law of hierarchy. You need to meet physiological needs. So there's no time to say, oh, I'm going to soul search and find myself. You need to find a job. You need to work for your family. You need to make sure that you kickstart the next generation moving forward. Now, that's a pressure that young people have to face, but also be young at the same time. But you're doing this within the constraints of 3 things. You don't have capital. You don't have resources. You don't have networks. Your country is not giving you the best education system. That's a big pressure that you have to face today. And all this is happening within the context of the 4th Industrial Revolution. And every day you're facing power cuts. You don't have electricity. You don't have the internet. That's the reality that many young people have to face. So as a young Zimbabwean based in Scotland, it's not that I enjoy a Scottish winter. I don't. But it's the realization that for me to be able to get access to these 3 ingredients that I've talked about, I need to be able to build bridges between Africa, where you've got these young people, and biology has it covered for us. If you've done psychology, there's what we call the Piagetian Messianic stage in youth development, where between the age of 16 and 22 or 24, your biology in itself will tell you that you can change the world. We've seen it with Greta Thunberg. We've seen it with so many young people that are these young millennial Gen Zs that are like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to stop climate change. I'm going to do this and that. It's because the psychology behind it is already ripe for them to change the world. What we require from the older generation are the ingredients to channel all that energy into a particular direction. But in a world where there's ageism, we'll just look at these young people and say, they're overzealous. They don't know what they're talking about. So platforms such as these ones and the communities behind, which have both young people and older people who have the credibility in society, are important, because we get to co-create, back to what Alexander and Stefan were talking about. We get to co-create, but in that process of co-creating, we also reduce the pressure, because we've got someone to guide us and say, no, this is not the right path. This is the right path. So that's I think is the problem of the present and the future.
Thank you very much. I mean, these are very strong, powerful messages, but let me challenge you a little bit back and ask you personally, how do you allow yourself, or how do you create an opportunity for yourself to still be young in the environment that sees you old? I mean, how do you keep your youthfulness, your freshness alive when such a big opportunity, such a big responsibility is already on your shoulder? Farai.
Thank you. I was hoping someone was going to take that up. But I think the question is, it's very hard. The answer is very straightforward. It's very hard to remain, young and youthful with all the responsibilities. But I think the opportunity that exists for young people is you have one opportunity, which is you're free from biases. The world has not fixed its perceptions on you and written them in stone enough. So you have a blank slate to get into problems where there are opportunities, where there are challenges and solve them with an open mind. And I think that's the first point of call for being a young person in a team of older veterans, is you come in with a fresh mind. So the responsibility to you is you have to perform the task, but the opportunity in your youngness is you perform the task with a blank slate. So that's what my response is on this one.
Very good provocative thought. Hrishika, how do you relate to that? How do you feel? Do you experience the same? You're doing some incredible things as well in India, you know, the things that you normally adults would do. So how do you feel, and what do you think when you listen to Farai's comments?
So I think similar to what Farai also said, right? It becomes difficult to stay motivated and happy at all times when you have all these different kinds of responsibilities on your shoulder. But then at the same time, I think what you would need to keep reminding yourself is the larger picture, right? What essentially your motivation was when you started off, right? I think that's what we need to keep reminding ourselves whenever things get difficult, whenever there are periods where you're just feeling low and you're feeling that, you know, nothing will work out and there is so many things that we need to do. I think that's when it's better to just sit down, jot down your thoughts and understand what you're feeling, and like acknowledge and remind yourself what the big picture motivation for you is.
Jimena, what do you think?
I love this question. I think it's a matter about curiosity, of keeping the possibility of being amazed and wonder about what everything live and other people can bring us. And that's the key source to keep us young. And I think we all have that, no matter our age. We can't hear you, Violeta.
Thank you. Kevin, we also have here a question with how this discussion that we have actually relates to the climate change issues. Can you see a connection between this activism and what we just discussed with political engagement and solving these global challenges like climate change?
Yeah, I believe there's no one solution to achieve something regarding to climate change. I believe there are many possible ways to deal with the topic of climate change, if it is as an entrepreneur, as an activist, or as a in a political movement where I'm in at the moment.
Mm. But what about your challenge and with this responsibility, entering politics at this early stage is also quite a burden on your shoulder. I mean, you're getting into a stream with some very sophisticated and maybe demanding emotions that are part of the political scenery. How do you relate to that?
Yeah, true. But also we want to create a new form of politics. We don't want to stick with the old politics, and that is where our 4 pillars come into play.
Please explain them.
The 4 pillars, yes. You already, I think, talked about them. Mindfulness, the pillar of freedom, the pillar of, there's no real word, but it's basically translated in power restriction, and the pillar of collective intelligence. And we do not really, or I do not really feel the pressure from the group, as in from my colleagues or from my party, but I think the pressure I feel is just coming from myself, from wanting to suffice for the job, to perform the best as I can and represent, of course, the values and the ideas we have in the party. So the 4 pillars are basically a new holistic framework. We want to, sort of a vision how we believe politics should be and how a new societal living together could be. And there is the question about how do we deal with climate change is basically answered by one of the 4 pillars, by the pillar of mindfulness. How do you want to be with the other people? How do you want to engage with the nature, with your planet? You want to be mindful. You want to regard and value the things, the people, the environment. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Pinamaya, you've been a volunteer, you've been scout, and very closely, you relate very closely with the nature. Can you make this bridge now? I mean, with what just Kevin just said and the rest of the colleagues mentioned in, can the new spirit also change the way how we as a society function? Can the young generation actually bring this awareness as a strong push and challenge all of us who belong to this older, let's say, generation, and we are still a bit rigid about making a change?
Well, I think we already are. Maybe not as fast as we would want to, or maybe it's not that seen yet, but I think we are already making changes because, you know, we are thinking about the future. We are trying to find our own path that is not determined by maybe our parents, our families, or the place where we come from. And I think that our generation has this need to be themselves and to maybe look outside the box and find different paths, find different possibilities and work on them. And I think that to our generation, a word that something is impossible is, you know, it's not impossible, it just hasn't been done yet. And I think that we are going towards that mindset. But of course, we still have to, you know, learn or find a way how to be more seen. But it is true that, well, I think that the whole community around the world is afraid of new things because, you know, we don't know what to expect. And even though we may not like what we have right now, we know what we have right now. So it's in a way safer than the unknown that awaits for us in the future. But I think we are slowly making changes and opening that space. And I do believe in our generation. Also because I think that we are, you know, between two groups. You know, a bit older people who have you know, their own way, and then like today's really young kids who live in a totally different world. And we kind of know both of them. You know, we know a world without all the electronics and all the new technological innovations, but we also know that they are possible. So we kind of can understand and talk with both sides. And I think that's a really good advantage to have. And our role is just to build a path and to find a balance between both of them, because not everything that is new is better, and not everything that is old is, you know, not good anymore. So I think that it is our job to find the balance between those two sides.
Great, thank you very much. And I think we need to include our audience a little bit at this point, because there are questions, many of them. And I noticed that Dora has been quite active. So why don't we invite her to just say it on her own. And Dora, please, you know, state your questions, because I believe that they are for all our guests. So then we will see who will respond first. Go ahead, Dora.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering, when you're talking about priorities, I don't consider myself old either, even though I have children already. And how do people develop their priorities, right? So I'm just trying to bring in the aspect of upbringing and how to resolve conflicts of priorities when we do know that there is a limit to what can be done. And then if everybody is just free to do what they would like to do and what makes them happy, how do you manage that within finite resources?
Great, thank you very much for your question. Who wants to go first? Okay, Rishika, go ahead.
So I think prioritizing things and happiness do not have to be two different things. Sometimes to be able to create a world where collaboration is at the center of everything else, I think it's important to understand other people's priority as well, to be able to reach out to them, to be able to speak with them, communicate with them as to what your goals are, instead of discarding what their priorities are, right? And you did talk about upbringing, and I think we are socialized into a lot of these things. So even your example about people posting on Instagram, I think it's just the way that our world has started to operate now. Most of us are on social media. We get a lot of validation from social media, which is having a lot of adverse impact on young kids, and there have been reports for this. But at the same time, I still feel that it's very important to create a community that allows people to be happy, and at the same time that community is able to help the other individual understand what they can actually prioritize. And apart from that, I also feel that there are so many issues that you can prioritize one thing at one time, but you do need to look at everything in tandem, and you have to look at everything in connection to each other. So I think I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what my those are my thoughts.
Could we hear in your answer that there is no strict rules how to create priorities, because we live in this dynamic, very fast changing world. So you, as a person, you're constantly in this flow as well and readjusting. So maybe that's a challenge for us older generations, because we are a bit already stuck in some structures and it's really hard to step out of them. But the chaotic world around us is probably here to stay. So we need to learn how to float within this chaotic stage and dynamic systems, and then get comfortable with it and constantly reprioritize our thoughts based on what you said, Rishika, based on who we interact with and what their priorities are. But Farai, I mean, you are in entrepreneurship, which by definition usually is very strict with goals and visions and strategies. And how do you relate to that? I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, as I was hearing the question, I think one of the key things that I got to as I was listening is that there's definitely no cookie cutter approach to saying what are the priorities. I think when we exist in this world, we inherit priorities. There are some priorities that we are born with. So we inherit those priorities or responsibilities by virtue of the context and the reality in which you exist. So that is different from someone in South America, in Africa, in whatever part of the world that you are. It can be part of your community or your culture. There are certain predetermined priorities. But within the context of entrepreneurship, there are things that we cannot run away from, like supply and demand, and the ability to constantly innovate and be customer-centric. But also, as time moves on, there's the idea of sustainable business, right? So we are talking about climate change now. There's a huge movement for businesses to become environmentally conscious and not just focus on the idea of profit, 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 profit. So that has become a priority of recent because of the information that has come in. Because the more information that comes in, the idea of climate change, all these external input of information, they constantly allow us to readjust on what our priorities should be as individuals, as communities, and as businesses. So I like what Rishika was saying, it's always dynamic and shifting.
Mm. Yes. Thank you. So Jimena, you would like to come in too, please. What's your comment? You also have a very interesting background in Waldorf teaching, where again, it's quite a different approach to challenges and problem solving. What's your thought?
Yeah, I was like reading questions that Dora was making and listening to Farai and Rishika, and it constantly came to me the concept of dialogue. As we were saying priorities are variable. There are a lot of them, and it will depend on our realities. And we'll live in a world where we have and we coexist with different realities, and that's the truth. And we cannot expect for everyone to understand the different realities. We can barely empathize with some rough realities, with abundance and with lack of them. We're just standing in our ground, trying to understand different perspectives. So what about trying to dialogue from a common language, or not even if there exists a common language, trying to interconnect with people. So this example of Instagram and about posting and fashion, and yeah, it seems so vain and so superficial. Well, that's a prejudge, because for some people, for some group of people, this might be a strong identity, a way of identifying, of expressing who they are, and maybe they'll have the opportunity about finding sustainable fashion thanks to all these influencers who are now promoting this kind of creation of fashion in a different impact to the world. And then they will think, oh wow, how is my clothes made, and where's this fabric comes from, and how do people work? So the importance of asking questions. If we are dialoguing in different ways, not only this communication but visuals and so many impacts that we have in this communicational world, to help people ask questions.
I mean, Jimena, you just opened an incredible new thought that the globalization is bringing new types of languages that are not really the classical type of languages, but people globally are communicating with each other on a content level, like fashion, like music or something like that. That is quite an incredible thought. Have you explored it further? Do you work with this type of language?
I believe it's quite about this quality of being open, really, of trying to move out of all your thoughts, of your ideas, of what has to be, or what is the other person trying to say. Is really being a blank sheet and perceiving this other self. And whenever it comes some noise from your thoughts, is quieting them. It's, okay, what are you trying to really tell me? And again, asking these questions. Okay, do you mean this? And what is this about? And yeah, more that in this dialogue, when I'm observing or interacting with the other persons from different cultures and different backgrounds, that's my standing ground, for example. We can't hear you again.
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks. We also have another very interesting comment from the audience. And Guillermo Fernandez, would you just like to come in by yourself and raise these questions that you put at the end of your comment? Please unmute yourself. Just unmute yourself, please, Fernandez. We cannot hear you. You're still muted. Okay, let's move on. And if you can figure out, it must be a technical issue. If you can unmute yourself, we'll bring you in later on. And Alexander, you had some comments and you wanted to raise a question as well. Please go ahead.
I do, and I'll try to keep it brief since we also have Chenesai and Ramit and Elke now. I'm looking forward to hearing from them as well, and perhaps even Stefan, but maybe. So I think here that what I'm hearing also is coming back to this idea again of the temporal frames and the collective intelligence. I want to focus on those two things again. They seem to be coming up strongly for me, because it really appears to me as if different generations are just different cultures in time. Like here we have many cultures represented, and we can talk about, hey, let me know more about your culture and about how you see the world, and how are things in your area of the world, and how are the priorities in the living engagements. So we can learn with and from each other. That's important to be able to get perspectives on the common challenges that are facing humanity if we're thinking about this in terms of a global eco-civilization. So we do that when we think about people from different parts of the world and different ethnicities and different cultural traditions. can we do that also in the same way when we think about different generations? You're just a different temporal culture, not a temporary culture, but a culture in time. And so we get to know each other just like we're knowing each other's values and frameworks from different geographical or historical cultures. This, for me, it comes to the question, or actually the recognition that we are not alone. I think this is something, you know, in much of what 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗂𝗏 was saying as well, in terms of what Stefan prompted at the beginning of finding one's path. And the best way to do this is together. I think specifically in the challenges for a global eco-civilization, Violeta mentioned, you know, VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous dynamics that we're facing more and more. None of us is as smart as all of us, right? This is a principle of Ubuntu. This is also the sense of how we can engage together. And I want to come back to another thing. I'm picking up on a couple of things, both that Hrishika and that Pinamaya were talking about with regard to critical mass. Often we talked about it's going to take a critical mass of humanity to make a change. I don't think so. I think it's less important the quantity of people than the focused or concentrated, determined engagement of people.
Alexander, can I jump in here and ask Kevin if he agrees with you? Because Kevin is more into politics, and then I'll get back to you. But this,
let me just round up. Let me bring this over to Kevin, but let me round it out so that Kevin can pick it up maybe more completely. So let's pass it to Kevin just 1 second, because this idea of the difference between critical mass is about extension, how extended we are, and the focused or the concentrated, something you mentioned, Violeta, about the density of interactions is more about the intensity of the engagement. And the last thing here, and then I'll drop the mic, is that this connects with another thing that Pinamaya was talking about, and also 𝗵𝗃𝗂𝗏, about passion, about inner truth, and about love and empathy. And so maybe these are the things that are more important than simply quantity of people and critical mass. So thank you.
Okay, great, Alexander, because this is one thought that we might, it's a good thought to connect to our previous talk, Politics in Eco-Civilization. Kevin, do you think that the future of politics can go beyond the current political labeling, like socialists and I don't know, Greens and people's parties? Do you think that the future of politics could be more into content?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I personally am not a huge fan of labeling or dividing or putting in boxes. So we are trying that maybe on a practical example. We are trying to implement that in our party with this new form of, it's not a new form, it's a form of decision making, which is called arriving at the systemic consensus. So a consensus finding for political parties. So how this works is like you don't simply ask a yes or no question or view a topic like black or white, but systemic consensus, or to find a systemic consensus. Everybody is allowed to propose a certain way of doing it, propose a proposal or whatsoever. And this proposal, regardless of if it's just a person, if it's a minority in the group, if it's a majority in the group, or whatsoever, has to be regarded for the decision making. And each proposal which has been brought forward needs to be evaluated then. And then you just don't say yes or no in the end, but you systemic consensus works with resistance points. So you have all these different examples. It's always easiest to go, if we all together want to order some food, and then we have somebody wants to order Chinese, the other one wants to order sushi, I will go for traditional German kitchen, and so on. So we have all these different choices, and then it's very difficult to get to agree on one, because if we do things as we used to do them with just a simply yes or no, maybe some of us will be disregarded in that regard, and maybe some of us have really important backgrounds why they voted against something. Maybe they're allergic to something, maybe differencing whatsoever. but trying to find a consensus and working with resistant points gives you then a different, most of the time, a different conclusion and result in the end. And it generates the least dissatisfaction in the group. It is accepted the easiest in the group because we are generating a consensus within us. And it produces the least conflict potential, because if you're allowed to grade the decisions with, for example, points from 0 to 10, 0 being I have the least resistance, and 10 is I have the highest resistance because I'm allergic. I can't go to, I can't eat meat for what reasons whatsoever. Then we are regarding all people or all belongings from the group. So finding a consensus. I hope that was clear.
Well, thank you very much for, yes, being very clear. I have many questions to add, but I'd like to move on, and maybe we'll hear you and your thoughts in the forthcoming future more often, also within our community. And Ramit, you made many very valuable comments and responded to some comments of other people as well. Please, can you come in and maybe just raise a few questions that some of our young guests can reply to?
No, I have to take this opportunity. It's something that I'm asking a lot of people around me, and just looking at all of these wonderful panelists doing the wonderful things that they're doing. I really want to know about how they personally deal with conflicting situations, and how they deal with conversations where the person on the other side doesn't necessarily agree with them, right? Because that's the real part. And, you know, Dora also started this conversation right in the beginning about an hour ago, saying that it seems like all of us are very like-minded, right? So how do we engage with those who aren't as like-minded as us? So from your experiences, all of you, Kevin, Farai, Jimena, Rishika, Pina Maya, is there any thoughts that you have in terms of anecdotes of real life situations where someone disagreed with you about a position that you hold dear to yourself, and you tried to work it out, but maybe you weren't able to, or maybe you were able to? But just hearing those anecdotes would be absolutely wonderful if we can just take a round if we have the time.
Okay, I'll ask Pina Maya to come first, and then Rishika, Jimena, then Farai, and Kevin. Be brief, but yes, it's a good question. Share some good experiences.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question. And I mean, I found myself in situations like that many times, and I'm sure many will come in the future as well. And I remember that I used to be afraid of people not agreeing with me, because I didn't know what will come out of that, you know, especially working on different projects. And then I, you know, read this interesting thought that when we, you know, when we come together, when people who don't agree come together, the real magic begins, because then you are able to share different opinions, different thoughts, and really find the best possible way out of a situation. And now I actually really like working with people who don't always agree with me. But what I think is, you know, something that you also mentioned before, I mean, it is about accepting that we don't always have to be right, or, you know, we have to, or it's good to allow other people, give them the benefit of the doubt, and take a couple of seconds and say to ourselves, okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe someone else is right, and evaluate their answer. And then really, you know, after that, after giving them an honest opportunity, deciding if I still believe that my answer or my path is the right one, or maybe the other person, you know, is right as well, or is, you know, right, or maybe we're both right. But I think the magic here is to accept that we don't always have to agree to be able to collaborate and work together and create together. Yeah, I think I don't know if I mean, I don't have one specific anecdote about it, but I think that the biggest lesson I learned is that it is not to be afraid of people who don't agree with me, but take that as something positive and try to make the best out of it.
Thank you. Very powerful thought, and especially for all the conflict areas. I think if practicing this could, elevate many of the challenges that we have in conflict areas. Rashika, do you have any good experience with conflicts, and can you provide some concrete example?
So in terms of examples, I think I would not have one example, but many. I keep having disagreements with people here and there. In fact, I would go on to say that I do end up having disagreements at my home as well, and that happens every second or third day. So then what I have learned, and this has been an experience that I've actually learned from my family and from these disagreements, I think what I've learned is that whenever there is a situation of conflict, whenever there are two people who are disagreeing with each other, it becomes extremely important for us again to have a conversation, right? And that's where I completely agree with what Pina Maya was saying as well, right? So I think when we look at two conflicts together is only when we can actually move away from those conflicts and start to find ways of collaborating, right? Because then we know that these are issues that we shouldn't be touching, right? We know that this could be a potential trigger for someone, and we know that these are issues that we don't want to touch, and that's probably how we can create better systems, we can create better communities, because we need to acknowledge that there will be conflicts. There can't be no conflicts in communities, so that's not possible at all. So we need to figure out ways through which we can resolve these conflicts and understand what is problematic for another person, and not going in that sphere, and then moving forward from there and collaborating collectively in that.
Thank you, Rishika. You're very consistent in always bringing this awareness of understanding the other people in the relationship, and build the solution based on understanding of others. Thank you very much for highlighting it one more time. Jimena, what do you think? I mean, you're building these global networks. I mean, I'm sure you're experiencing many different conflicts that don't need to be really devastating, but still cultural, language-wise, interest-wise. So what do you think?
Yes. Well, I can recall some of this conflicts with a colleague of mine, which we work really together. And like my learning in this process is to not take it personally. And second, it's an excellent opportunity of exploration in which I get to a negotiation of saying, okay, I don't know if I'm right, or we don't know if you're right, but what if we try what you're saying? Improve it if it works or if it doesn't, and then we try my strategy and we evaluate afterwards what are the impacts of what we're thinking and what we're saying, and also to bring fundamentals. Okay, it's not my idea, it's not that you're attacking my idea, but okay, this is the idea outside of me, this is the strategy, these are the reasons why, then let's see what happens when we apply it, and then we move on. And yes, I believe that's another way of collaboration. Now that we're talking about this word, I'm just like resignificating this situation. So yeah, that.
Thank you very much. I mean, Farai, I'd like to bring you in because with such a young population, with so many really not yet formed personalities, you're probably experiencing these conflicts all the time when you're trying to engage. So what's your take on it? How do you try to resolve them?
So I think within the line of work that we do when we are supporting young people with career development work, most of the conflict is between us and the parents and not necessarily the children, because the parents have a predetermined idea of what they want their children to do. I want my daughter to be a doctor, whether she likes it or not. That's why I'm paying school fees and she's got to work hard. So
why do I see everyone smiling at this point?
So at the end of the day, what we are realizing we are having to do is not only go an extra mile to expose the young person and give them the career education, but also the parents, because they have this expectation. When we understand that it comes from a place of love, but it also comes from a place of limited information in terms of what are the possibilities of the child. They know that, you know, if you're a doctor or an engineer or chartered accountant, your future is set. But also for most parents, the kids are an insurance for them when they also retire. So they will make sure that these kids get into the best job so that when they're successful, they also take care of the parents. So for you to then say, oh, you like playing football, why don't you go follow your passion in football? The parent doesn't want that. Because what are the probabilities that you end up playing for a big team? Or what is the probability that you break your leg and not be successful? But then we then have to sort of like understand where the power exists in this relationship, which is between me, the entrepreneur, and the parent, who happens to be my customer. So she pays for the program that the young person goes through, or he. So I have to make sure that they buy into the philosophy of what you're trying to achieve, versus the relationship between the customer, which is the parent, and the student, who is our beneficiary that we want to impact. So having these three people on the table and saying, you know, what we are trying to achieve is for the greater benefit of everyone. It's something that we've had to learn along the way, but it's always interesting when, you know, you have got parents coming in and you've got years of these aspirations that they've had for their for their kids since they were born. You having to break that and say, no, she's not going to become a pilot. She loves to be a chef. And that breaks so many hearts in the process.
Thank you, 𝗵𝗲, for bringing this very important point, which is, the intergenerational challenge in a way, but it's also an invitation for all structures of the society. It doesn't need to be only within the family. It's a really good example how in the society you have also those that are constantly refreshing the knowledge. They have access to information, and there were a couple of comments in the chat about the importance of the access to the right information, and those that don't have access, or they are somehow not willing to progress and develop any longer. So that's where conflicts start. And Kevin, can you imagine situation like that? Have you been part of it?
Yeah, and if I'm allowed to come back to Ramiz's question about the anecdote, I really do have one, and it's a conversation or a discussion I keep coming back with one of my closest and best friends, and we can't find a common ground. It's impossible for us to find a common ground, regardless of how long and how fiercely we both talk and discuss and even fight about it. But I think what is really important here is that, and that's what I think it came to me a last year sometime. Why is he behaving the way he is, and why do I behave the way I do behave? Because we have different value systems. We probably experienced different things in the past, and we do not do it out of spite or out of a bad gesture. And I think that's important, showing a bit of empathy for the other person. He is the way he is because something has happened in the past to him, or he's raised in a certain kind of way, or whatsoever. So there's a reason. It doesn't make him a bad person. I love him anyways. And that's I think, or I really do believe, what we can do as a society, and what we can do better, active listening and really showing empathy for one another, trying to understand why people behave the way they do, because I don't really think the majority of the people on earth are bad people. More or less, all of us want the same. It's what I truly believe, yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for this very important thought as well. Yes, I believe every person is good in her or his heart. And then life twists us and challenges us. And this capacity to respond to challenges then brings a very various outcomes. Let's close this discussion, which was most interesting, and I can see through comments that also our audience is very much appreciating the discussion. I would just like to invite you all to maybe have a thought on one wisdom that one of my professors shared with us. It says, whenever there is a potential of a conflict, look for a broader space, look for a broader field within which both expectations are exceeded, not lowered. and then everybody is happy, and the new world opens. So it's not a trivial task to do, but it's really rewarding. I mean, I've tried it so many times, and it really works. But let's move on. And 𝗫𝗁𝗫, you made few comments in the chat room as well, and you are one of the drivers behind this eco-civilization movement too. So what's your comment and possible question to our young panelists, please?
Wow, thank you so much. Every one of you have been so vital and really provoking. In my sense, I always say we have work to do. As a practitioner who has gone from theory to practice, a lot of philosophy, a lot of systems are lost in translation. I went to tears when 𝗵𝗺 was starting to describe the state of affairs for our youth, because coincidentally, I live on a farm, and every day I take in employment a 14-year-old pregnant girl, or a 13-year-old mother, or a 16-year-old boy who has not been able to go to school. This is my lived reality. And I sit with colleagues at the United Nations with systems, SDGs that have come from Millennium Development Goals, that I sit and I say, where are we losing it? And I sat and I thought, if we started to reimagine what a sense of togetherness actually means, perhaps that is the point of intersection. When we say we are together, we are working for global good, we are developing sustainable development goals, what is that reimagined reality? Because until we get to a point where a sense of togetherness is reimagined, the world is going to remain the way it is. 𝗵𝗺 talked about parents being, he talked about a disconnect between parents and the entrepreneurs. I looked at that and scaled it at a national level. There's such a disconnect between our government and what the citizens need. Kevin went to talk about citizens' responsibility. And I thought about how at constitutional law, we talk about rights. And for the longest time, we have forgotten to remind our citizens that with every right comes an obligation. So every right comes with responsibility. So we've been preaching rights, 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 and no responsibility. Every individual has a responsibility. Recently, we celebrated 41 years of independence as Zimbabwe. And a lot of people ask me, what does independence mean to me? And I thought about it, I pondered it, and one thing that came to my mind is we are free to lift each other up. We have that unfettered freedom to build each other. It's a responsibility as an individual, as a citizen of a nation, not only to amass wealth, but to give wealth. So to be frank, this has been such a vivid conversation, and I want us to go into a space, and I invite us to be in that space where we start reimagining what a sense of togetherness means. And back to Amina's point, how do we take this theory into a practical frame and start doing some of these things? Because I work in practice every day, like I said. Today I am sitting here, right now I'm imagining I have workers in the fields that have young kids that are below 5. And every time I go to the fields, they're sitting in a crate, they're doing all sorts of things. And my sons are in preschool, right? And right now, today, I'm reimagining, how can I convert one of my rooms into a preschool so that I can start teaching these kids to count? The practice of the things that we need to do really needs us to move a lot away from the conversation to piloting a lot of the things that we discuss as viable solutions. As a learner of systems change, and this is where Alexander's work always amuses me, and Stefan's work, how do we change these systems? I'm living in a third world country, or even worse, I've lived in a first world country, and to my mind, I'm still trying to bridge those gaps. I suppose my statement, my question, my meditation point going forward is, how do we reimagine what a sense of togetherness is? I am because you are.
Perfect, 𝗫𝗁𝗫. This is such a good statement. May I use it to invite all of our guest speakers to respond to it? And maybe just dare to dream. Are we ready to co-create a new civilizational paradigm? Who wants to start? Jimena, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, girl. Okay, I'm just gonna share a thought I had some time ago, not that long, when I was envisioning what kind of education I would like to see in this world. And I was actually writing this proposal for a master's, and well, I had some issues with that because of, I don't know, bureaucracy of that stuff. But thing I was imagining about, I had the opportunity in 2019 to travel around Europe, and that was life-changing for me. I had the opportunity to meet Stefan there, he mentioned that, and to see and connect more with the cultures from Europe, and say Europe is not one, you have so much diversity, and from inside one country, and well, yeah, a lot of things. And I was trying to think of this project in education. How could I, like a school teacher, help children connect with other cultures, with other visions, with other feelings, with other ideas? And in this crazy envisioning thing, I was imagining, okay, maybe children, we could connect, make monthly projects of geography, and we could all travel to Patagonia, live in the coast of the Patagonia, understand how the sea level works. How can we live in this community? How can we understand what other people are feeling and all this stuff? So I was just trying to imagine and envision how to get together in a learning process in which we can live and experience different realities. We can empathize in practice, and you know, things just happen. We cannot think of what's gonna move this interconnecting us. They just, something new appears, and we have to leave space for this. I don't know how is it in English, cuenco, a vessel, yeah, this is
a chalice or a bowl.
Yeah, a chalice, I like that word. Yeah, this is a sacred space for something new to emerge. And yes, and we have then the opportunity to share this new thing.
Lovely. I mean, it's a really powerful thought, and this dreaming together and co-creating together, we actually can manifest them, because thoughts are already the first step to manifestation. Do you agree, Kevin?
Yes, completely. I couldn't agree more. And yes, I do really believe that we can change or emerge into a new civilizational paradigm. That's what we're working for. And how to connect, that's a very, very difficult question, which I do not yet have the answer to, especially if we look at it globally. I mean, we are a small party in Germany, still a very small party in Germany, not at all at the moment, of course, thinking about the problem, but not at all trying to solve the issue. How do we share this idea and vision we have within our small group of people in our political movement with the world? Because we're still trying to, of course, get it out into Germany, and we have elections. So yeah, it's a big step, and a big challenge, an opportunity, of course.
Thank you very much, Pina Maya. How do you feel listening to all this? Does this remind you of your Scouts atmosphere, or you know, you guys dream together and then you manifest? You dream of a beautiful new Scout camp, and all of a sudden you are all creating it. I mean, tell us your thoughts, please.
Yeah, it's actually a nice starting point of what you just said. I do think it's really nice and important to dream, but also to take action. So yeah, let's keep dreaming, but also let's start making our first steps and ask ourselves, what is the change I want to see? What are my obstacles? Overcome them, and then what will be my first step toward reaching that goal? So to, yeah, not only dream, but also to act. I think that's the most important thing, because dreaming is nice, but if we don't start making action, dreams will only stay dreams. Why don't make them the reality as well? at the end, we have to take care not only about, the whole world, but also about, also take care of ourselves. So why not live in a world that we love, that we enjoy living in? And I want to say a couple of words to what Jimena said before, this community and collaborations, and I am because you are. And I think that's such a strong statement, but also I think it's important to realize that you are because we are. Each of us is an individual, but we come from a certain community, and we were raised by that community, we were taught by that community, and it's good to acknowledge that, to never forget about that, and to learn from our past experiences, and use them for creating a better future for ourselves, for the community, for the whole world. But I think the word collaborations was used so many times today, and I think it's really strong, and it got even stronger today hearing all of our thoughts, because you can connect it to so many different things, and it's such an important thing, because each of us can do so many things, but when we come together, we can do everything that seems impossible at the beginning.
Thank you very much. And this is a very strong call and message also for all the youth in Africa. Farai, what do you think? Can you use this as well in order to empower even stronger this incredible juvenile energy that you all have?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I have been obsessing over for the past 2 years now, and I remember having a conversation with 𝗫𝗫 about it, is the power of technology, community, and storytelling. I think storytelling is one of the key things. I mean, if you think about 50 years ago, we could not imagine a situation where you have people seated from all these different places coming together and having a conversation. Even our ancestors did not have this opportunity and privilege, but technology gives us that. The ability to tell a story, a singular story, which is everyone's story knitted together, creates this eco-civilization community. And I think that's the future of the reality that we are currently staying in, which is having everyone's story be heard. Because what changes people's perceptions, that suspicion that we have about what we don't know and who we don't know, can be broken down through storytelling. And I feel that through leveraging on technology and using stories, we can build communities that will be able to create the future for not only Africa and Europe or Asia, but the rest of the world. So I think we are sitting on a very big opportunity, which is technology and just our curiosity as human beings, which is to connect and to listen to stories, which is what we've been doing over the past couple of hours.
Fantastic, Farai. This is also a very strong call for continue to engage, because storytelling is happening in the community. Now it's evolving from one person to another, and that's the beauty of it. We call it fabulation, and it's very also a familiar tool to Latin American tribes, and they use it a lot in order to keep the old wisdoms alive. So this is certainly a very powerful message that we could all use when we try to engage, collaborate, and remember. Yeah, of course, we need that. We need to remember, not just constantly create something new. Hrishika, last but not least, how do you feel all this collaboration, engagement, storytelling, this collective understanding, how other parts of the world work together? All your work is actually around these issues. What is your thought about it?
Honestly, if you had asked me whether I can imagine a civilizational paradigm, a new civilization 2-3 hours back, I would have said no, because I do end up becoming a little cynical when it comes to human beings doing things, even though I really do believe in the principle of collaboration and communication. But just looking at the past, we have done some major damage to our planet, to our community. So I would have said no, but After this conversation, I think seeing how pumped up everyone is and how energetic everyone is about the change that we can bring, it just gives me more hope. It pushes my cynicism away. It gives me, enthusiasm. It gives me the energy to actually go forward and work towards building this paradigm, right? So I think that's what I do think about the civilizational paradigm. And even to go back to what Genesai had asked earlier about how we can reimagine togetherness, I think I would like to go back to what I started with, and that's an intersectional approach. I think if we are able to normalize intersectionality in our everyday life, right, I do believe that we can find answers, and if not direct answers, but at least the path to these answers, to these so many questions that we have, right? I think, and that's how we can also reimagine togetherness and the power of collectives. I think that's how I feel.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being able to integrate so quickly in such a short time, such a strong messages. And I'm glad that you are leaving this conversation more empowered and stronger, and also willing to create the new civilizational paradigm, which I feel deeply in my heart that is waiting for us. This is our duty, and if we're not going to do it, who's going to do it? And if we don't start it now, when? So these kind of conversations are really empowering this stream. So thank you very much. Elke, you were very patient. So please share your thoughts. What did you hear? I mean, there's been so many thoughts. So I am really curious, what did you hear? You are such an experienced politician, also civil, member of civil society, strongly and strong energy that wants to create a better world comes from you. So what did you hear and learn from these young people?
Yeah, I'm very grateful and very much impressed, I must say. Alexander and Stefan started off provoking us with their view on time. And of course, when you spoke about age, I felt it too, on which side I am right now. And I liked the different layers of time. And you spoke about being young versus being old, young having their own culture versus the elderly having their culture, knowledge and wisdom, and maybe freshness rather than wisdom. So we have these different layers there. And you said what we need is the unity in diversity. And that is a thing that I heard a lot from all of you, really. Holistic approach, or what 𝗵𝗵 said, intersectional approach, and in every respect, really, be it from the inside, so how do I feel and how I do act with the outside world. So it's always this togetherness, not only in terms of people, but also in terms of thinking, feeling. That is what I heard a lot. And then I also liked the discussion about do we need a connective intelligence before we have a collective intelligence? And do we need connective wisdom? So that is something I'll definitely reflect more on. And what I see as a difference in, let's say, traditional politics or ways of operating is that you put a lot of strength on soft skills. We used to say a few years back, and Violetta, you will remember that, we used the term soft skills. And again, 𝗵𝗵, for instance, you said we need to sense things rather than just think through them. And when I think of that, it's true, we have memory cells, not only in the brain, but also in the heart and in the guts. And if we manage to use them all, connect them all, we have a lot more information available. We can perceive a lot more information, and we have not done that in public operating so far. So that I love that very much. And I also love the notion of self-responsibility and the discussion of how to get there. I don't have an answer of how to get there, but what I can say from the Western world, and notably from Germany, is that we have been doing a welfare state, which made us irresponsible. which now goes so far as to decide on our health, on our bodies. So we have lost self-responsibility by an overdoing welfare state. And maybe we should look into that more. How can we curb that? What can we do to make self-responsibility a sweetness, to make it attractive to people? So that I found very interesting. And again, all the discussion around passion, and I have been thinking of that myself. Pina Maya, you talked about that. We have to find the passion, and Dora chipped in. Where are the limits? I very much like to listen to personal development trainers, and they say, you find your passion and then you can do everything, which is true, you can. But do you lose sight out of, does this do any harm to others? And I think that is a question that we can maybe cope or tackle with awareness, Kevin, what you have subscribed to and your party has subscribed to. So I love that a lot as well. So soft skills like attitude, be amazed, open-minded, because we have this VUCA world. That is very important as well. And again, I would count that under what we have never practiced in politics before or in the public world. Have this open and curious attitude, even if we see an obstacle. I like that very much. And the role of the youth, and that is that's your privilege. You bring that with you, whereas we, most of us, have to learn it or had to learn it, and you have that. So you are fit for this new world, even for the VUCA world, because you might find it attractive. Run with it. So. I think I wrapped that up. You also talked about how to solve conflicts, and again you came up with soft skills like looking at the relationships rather than the individual people. So how can we work with the relationship? I would call it third entity rather than start blaming. I like that very much. And also the question, why does the other person react like that? Why does he or she behave like that? And why do I? So really this self-reflection, which is not done in the current or in the past world. And finally, you talked about the togetherness and you came up with wonderful ideas like how can we actually create it? You said with consenting, that is the practice that Kevin described, or Farai, you said storytelling and the use of technology. And you also said enthusing one another. I think Jimena, you said that. How can we do that? And how can we, and Reshika as well, how can we be passionate about this new world? So thank you very much. It was very inspiring for me.
Thank you, Elke, for this really good wrap up and bringing to our awareness again some very strong points out of this conversation. Now I'd like to go back to our panelists and ask them, just tell me two words. What would you like to leave behind if you have a chance from this world, and what would you like to take with you to the new civilizational paradigm? Really quickly. And you have a couple of minutes to think about. Alexander, you gave us a lot of also nice theoretical frameworks within which we can place the ideas that we discussed today. What is your final thought? And Stefan, what is your final thought? 1 minute each. Please, go ahead, Alexander.
Well, I think what I would like to leave behind is divisiveness, a sense of the other. There's this wonderful expression or the question where the student asks the master, how can I help others? And the response is, there are no others. So when we come to realize that, and we come to engage with each other and see ourselves as a reflection and reflected in the others, this is the kind of empathetic searching and engaging that I feel, and Kevin spoke very nicely to this as well, but I think this is exactly what Elke was also talking about just now, this empathetic engagement. So again, I would love to see more of this, which is respectful, honoring, and celebrating life. Yes, there are problems and obstacles, but if we focus on that, we're only going to be engaged in the pathology of our times. But when we look at the possibilities and we dream together, we'll find ways of transcending them. That's what I feel is coming out of this beautifully.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexander. Stefan, what would you have as a final thought?
On the final thought of what would I like to leave behind and take with me? Oh my goodness. You just gave me 1 minute to think about it.
And you just used half of it already, so you have only 30 seconds left. Let's go,
Right.
2 words.
So my response is, that might be not the answer you may expect, but I don't think there is much to change in that sense of what would I like to leave behind before? Why? Because I had the fortune in my life that I met wonderful people who were supportive to me. I have the fortune in my life that I can support now other people. Generosity is key. So I wouldn't like to change this.
I'm very happy you're taking us all with you. That's lovely. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you that I had the opportunity to listen to you. That was
perfect.
Very generous of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ramit and 𝗀𝗃, just half a minute. What would you leave behind? What would it take with you? Ramit?
So, extremely difficult question, Violeta. There's probably a massive list, or there's no list at all, right? Again, as Stefan said, so maybe there's no list, or maybe there's a massive list, lot to think about. But on the top of my head, I think I'd like to leave behind this lack of transparency that we have shared with everyone around us in all the conversations that we have, whether it's at a macro level, at the government level, or whether it's in our own families, right? The lack of transparency is something that I'd like to leave behind. And something very related to that is what I'd like to take forward is our ability to be transparent. Because I do believe that we all have the ability to have open, honest conversations. It's just that we don't do it enough right now. So if we can leave that behind, that transparency, that lack of transparency that exists in today's world, and we can merely take forward our ability to be transparent, conversations will become so much easier, and hopefully the world will be very different from what it is today.
Thank you very much. 𝗀𝗃?
Oh,
Mike.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was not buying time. I couldn't find the mute button. But I suppose for me, it's to leave behind is the opportunity to build trust networks, because they are so fundamental in building systems, such as this room we're in, where we can trust each other to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is so essential if we are going to change this world. Otherwise, we are going to do nothing. What I will take with me is the importance of continued conversation. Which is why I love Open House. I'm looking forward to it. Being able to throw ourselves in new paradigms, to learn other people, to understand, to build an understanding, which is really related to trust. Because one day when I want to work on something, we've sat here and I've been vulnerable with my work, so have you. We can have a platform to go further and explore and perhaps change the world, or I don't know. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to our panelists, let's hear your fresh thoughts. What would you leave behind, and what would you take with you to this new civilizational paradigm, which today we call eco-civilization? Farai, go ahead.
I would like to leave behind this blame game of the youth don't understand, they don't want to listen to us, and also the youth saying, the older guys don't get us, they are so slow with things. Like, I want to leave that behind. And what I would like to take forward is just the courage to be vulnerable, to be open, to try new things, and to get to learn and be curious. So carrying courage forward and leaving behind blame.
Super, thank you very much. Pinamaya.
Well, yeah, it is a very difficult question, but I think that what I would leave behind is inequality and disrespect. And what I would want to take with me are actually all the experiences that we as a, collective consciousness gathered in the past, because each of those experiences made us who we are today. And without them, we wouldn't be thinking about the tomorrow we want to build. So
thank you very much. Powerful thought as well. 𝗫𝗫𝗃, what would you like?
So I think everyone's already taken my answer away, because everyone has ended up answering something or the other that I have been thinking. And very, very difficult question, but I do think that I have a very similar answer to Pina Maya's. I think what I would want to leave behind are inequalities and this intolerance of not being able to understand each other. And that's what I have been saying. So I think, and what I'd essentially like to take forward from here would be the everyone understanding the importance of just speaking with each other and understanding each other. So I think that's what I would like to reimagine.
Super. Jimena, what would you?
I could say I'd love to leave behind misery in all its aspects, in all its levels, and continue with love in its unimaginable and mysterious meaning. That.
What would you say?
I guess it's my turn. Didn't hear you quite. I would leave behind meritocracy and probably this dog-eat-dog mentality we live in. We always have to fight one another. We always have to be better than one another. There's no collaboration. And what I would like to take into this new civilizational paradigm, yes, openness and our 4 pillars.
Great, thank you very much. And at the end, I need to share mine too, because you challenged me a lot. So what I would like to leave behind is everything that is no longer serve us for the collective well-being. And I'd like to take with us this incredible courage and that we saw today, to be able to face the challenges that are ahead of us and in a collaborative way, so that we are no longer afraid. So leave the fear and leave, which is one of the things don't serve us anymore, and to really move forward with curiosity and courage to face the challenges together. So this is the end. I'm very grateful for those that stayed with us till the end of the conversation. I'm extremely grateful to all of you young representatives of a young generation from 4 different continents, sharing so openly and with so much passion and love your thoughts. Thank you for doing such an incredible work in your own environments. And I hope you feel even more connected and supported now. And I hope you will reach out in case that you want more support or you have some ideas that you would like to manifest. And thank you to Alexander, Stefan, 𝗀𝗃, Ramit, 𝗫𝗫𝗫. Thank you for helping us to hold a safe space for these young people to dare to speak, to dare to engage, and to have a belief that intergenerational cooperation is possible. So I hope that we will continue to create this opportunity to really consciously reinvent the society, that our civilizations don't need to fall in order to rise again. So I see in our talks the power of transformative thinking and actions in order to smoothly move into something fresh and new, which today we call eco-civilization. So thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
We will be this was recorded, and we will be posting this recording on all social media. And of course, we will have